Good morning and welcome to this meeting of the Waste and Street Scene Policy Committee. Thank you for all interrupting your Christmas shopping. Welcome to people at home. This meeting today is open to the public. It will be webcast and the recording will also be available for people to view later through the council website. We have received no petitions and I believe that's now 3 public questions from 1 member of the public. Please can I ask mobile telephones and other such equipment are switched to silent mode so as not to disturb the conduct of the meeting. There is no fire test planned for today. If there is an emergency evacuation, please take instruction from the Town Hall staff. The assembly point is Tudor Square. So let's have introductions. I'm Councillor Jolton, Chair of this committee and a member for Dore and Totley.
Good morning, I'm Mike Chaplin. I'm a councillor for Southey Ward.
Janet Meyer Richards, representing the Dalek Nation, and also Manor and Castle Ward.
Councillor Talib Hussain, Councillor for Burnley Ward.
Good morning, I'm Christine Gilligan-Kubo and I'm a councillor for Hillsborough Ward.
Good morning, Councillor Alexi Diamond, Councillor for Gleadless Valley and Green Party spokesperson on Waste and Street Scene Committee.
Councillor Tim Huggan, Councillor for Crooks and Crossbow Ward.
Councillor Sue Alston, Councillor for Fulwood.
Thank you. And officers, let's go down this side first.
Good morning, Robert Parkin, Assistant Director for Legal Services.
Morning, Richard Eyre, Director of Street Scene and Regulations.
Rachel Appleyard from Democratic Services.
Thank you. Welcome everybody. Apologies for absence. We've got apology for Tony Dams. I believe Gary Wetherall was due to substitute, is now also apologised.
Yeah, that's right.
And do we have apologise from Mark Jones? Mark Jones. And Talib is substituting. Okay, thank you. Is there anything else? I think we're all here apart from that.
Apologies.
Okay, thank you. All items of today's meeting are open to the press and public. Declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? I should say, so as we have Yorkshire Water attending, I would declare that I'm an enthusiastic open water swimmer, which does occasionally involve some of their excellent reservoirs. I
declare I really am not an open water swimmer, and I think it's an abomination.
Yes, you can. Any other declarations of interest? Okay. Minutes of the previous meeting on page 11. Read that while the Christmas chimes are going. There we go. Oh no, they're still going. I think we might have to proceed. Are there any comments or corrections for those minutes? If not, can we take them as agreed, as a correct record?
Agreed, Chair.
Okay, thank you, that's agreed. Okay, item number 5, public questions and petitions. We have no petitions. We have questions from Andy Buck. Yes, would you like to come to the table and put your questions? One at a time, I think, it's fine.
There we are. Morning, everyone. I'm Andy Buck, a resident of Chipping House Road. I've got three questions, all of which are follow-up questions to those that I asked when I came to the committee on the 27th of September. Firstly, on 24th of March, I emailed Streets Ahead following a member of Streets Ahead staff visiting our street, marking up one pothole for repair, ignoring several other hazardous potholes and disappearing. And I asked in my email, why weren't these other potholes marked for repair, which was treated by Streets Ahead as a complaint. And I've since been told on 7 occasions that owing to ongoing investigations, it has not been possible to respond to my concern, which frankly is absurd. And At the committee on the 27th of September, I was told that many of the points have been addressed in the Streets Ahead response dated the 7th of August, and that the ongoing remaining issues will be responded to by October 2023. My concern was simple. Why didn't the Streets Ahead member of staff mark up the other hazardous potholes for repair? So my question is, will the council please ensure that I receive a response to this concern and tell me by when I will receive it? Do you want me to pause?
Yes, I'm struggling slightly to follow because I have answers prepared. But yeah, why don't you give all the questions?
So do the other bits as well?
Yeah.
So secondly then, also on the 27th of September, I asked, will the council guarantee that Amy will repair all the sections of Chipping House Road marked up for repair on the 15th of September before the yellow markings fade and disappear? The answer was unequivocal. Yes, Amy have confirmed that they will repair all the sections marked up for repair. Now, when I submitted the questions, I provided a set of photographs. I don't know whether they've been circulated. Good. 3 months have passed. The yellow markings are no more. No work has been done. So I'd like the council to explain why the commitment has not been fulfilled and what steps you'll take to ensure that Amy does so and by when the repairs will be completed. And then my third questions are about, of course, the substantive underlying problem, which is that for the best part of a decade, Chipping House Road is needed to be properly and fully repaired. I'm pleased to see that it's in phase 3 of the CIP design programme reported to you later. And I'd like to know whether you can confirm that the design process will be completed by the 31st of March 2024 and whether Amy will definitely complete all required works by the 31st of March 2025. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your questions. So I've got obviously answers been prepared for you, which I will read out, which I may have to comment on a little bit as I do. So on your first point, in terms of your question 1, I think this is about the adequacy of the response. The answer here is that a draft response has been compiled and provided to the council, which will be checked for sign-off. And I don't understand what the response I've got here is, to be honest, on that. But I believe that this means that we have a draft response which will be checked and sent to you when it is ready. On your question, why didn't the Streets Ahead member mark up the other hazardous potholes? The answer here is that a condition survey was undertaken on the 18th of January 22 and a routine safety inspection was undertaken on the 2nd of December 2022. There were further ad hoc inspections on the 19th of January 23, 22nd of March 23, 3rd of May 23, 16th of June 23, following receipt of reports from members of the public. The inspector carrying out the inspection on the 22nd of March 23 will have identified defects requiring immediate intervention. The lesser defects would be left to pick up as part of planned works. During the condition surveys, issues identified are added to our bespoke software system, which creates a condition score. The condition survey undertaken on 18th of January 22 identified overall failures on a section of the carriageway from Aberdale Road to Crescent Road. Under the Streets Ahead contract, the condition scores mean that when the average condition of a given road or section of road falls below these preset condition scores, any failures must be addressed. As the data is run once a year, however, and the condition survey interval is every 2 years, there is often a delay before roads or sections of roads are eligible for works to be undertaken. This is often why interim repairs are carried out to ensure that the road remains in a safe condition for all road users. I think that's a statement of the policy. You've probably heard something similar to that before, haven't you? Let me answer the next bit and I'll come back to this. On your question about the markings having gone and no work being done, the answer here is that all Category 1 defects have now been repaired and follow-up works completed. There have been delays due to this street being part of the outstanding core investment period programme and an initial view that any non-urgent works should wait until the CIP programme has been completed. However, this has been rightly challenged as unacceptable, and Amy will be carrying out an interim treatment to eliminate further defects until the fully designed scheme is completed by December 2025. This treatment will be carried out in March 2024. So I think what you've got there and what you've hit upon is that streets in the CIP have not had the full resurfacing, and that category 2 defect. Well, there are two issues going on here. If I could explain what I've just read in my own words, it might be a little bit clearer. One is that there is an issue with category 2 defects across the city, in that they're often not done promptly, and there's an intention to leave them until a group can be done together, and that means that that they're hanging around for a long time. There is a second issue that the core investment period streets are not, even if they're failing a condition score, they've not been resurfaced, had a full resurfacing. So that the combination of those two issues means that Shipping House Road has been effectively hit with a double whammy. What we have, and we've challenged Amy on this because we consider it unacceptable, and so what you've had in the answer here is that there is a surface treatment will be applied in March 2024 as a result of this challenge that we've put to them. Does that make sense? Does that make any more sense than the answer you got as I read it out?
I think it makes more sense. Do you mind if I make an observation? It just, if you mark up a street extensively, as my photos show, with yellow markings, evidently marking up parts of the street which require repair, and then nothing happens, and that happens repeatedly, just brings the whole process into disrepute. And it's not just me that's fed up with this. My neighbours are fed up with it, and their confidence in the council is diminished as a consequence, and it just doesn't serve anybody at all well. And frankly, I'm not sure that the explanation, I'm not sure there is an explanation actually. And I think you can understand our frustration. Feels as though our streets and some neighbouring streets are frankly slightly blighted by this, and it feels like we kind of repeatedly get fobbed off.
Yeah, I appreciate your comments. I mean, I think we feel a great deal of frustration at times in terms of our discussions with Amy and the operation of the contract and so on and so forth. I don't want this to degrade to a conversation, but briefly, Shonad, if you do want to weigh in here.
I just wanted to ask, is it a bit like when you go to a hospital and as long as they've seen you and taken your temperature or something within an hour, then you appear to have been triaged? Is it a bit like that as long as periodically they go and they've completed their some part of the contract?
It is a bit like that, and category 1 defects are treated within the timescale required. Category 2 defects we have for very complicated reasons an issue with across the city, and we have the additional issue of the outstanding streets from the core investment programme, and those two have collided in Shipping House Road. I mean that's so. I think. Sorry, Richard. Oh, Mike. Yeah. I'm not desperate to open this up, but okay. Let me move on to the final question. But go on. Yeah, Mike.
Yeah, if I may, Chair, and to help the viewers and listeners at home, this might actually feed to Richard rather than yourself. If there could be some explanation as to the difference between the category 1 defects and the category 2 defects that we're talking about here.
Yes, apologies to viewers at home. Obviously, a category 1 defect is a large pothole, and a category 2 defect is a small one. I think that's probably the long and short of it. And there is a technical difference. Richard.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, Councillor. Just to give a quick summary, Cat 1s or the class as dangerous. So they're the ones where we have the 24-hour timescale, and Amy are really, really good at meeting those timescales. We are aware, we talked to a committee in September about Cat 2 ones, which are the general potholes, significant backlog. We have now got a recovery plan in place to rectify those issues over the next year period, and we are coming back to committee on an update on Amy's performance in February. I suppose just coming back to Mr. Bulk's question, completely agree, and this is part of the issue where we go out and we mark lots of potholes, set expectations, but they're all going to get done, and then half are done because the cat is, and then the others just left, deferred, and then we go back out. It's not acceptable. We completely get that, and that will change in the next 12 months.
Thank you. So on your third question, you're asking for commitments on the dates of 31st of March 24 and 25. This is a commitment the council made about 8-9 months ago now in response to the Lowcock report, and we are still committed to those dates. And Amy have made a commitment to those dates. You'll see later in this agenda there's a report to this committee where we are examining the strength of that commitment. Let me put it that way. There is also a report to the Strategy and Resources Committee tomorrow, which is also looking at the strength of that commitment and looking at, again, it's a slightly broader in terms of the response to the Lowcock report. So that commitment remains, and this committee is taking steps to ensure that, you know, the council is able to deliver on that commitment.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to ask the questions. I look forward to seeing the answers in writing. Thank you very much.
That concludes public questions. The next item on the agenda is the work programme. I believe there's a slight supplement that has come out. Has that gone round, Rachel?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Do you want to present it? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. So bear with me, there's a couple of things to update members on this morning. So the work programme lists all the known substantive agenda items for the next meetings of the committee, and there was a number of updates to make members aware of. So there's been 2 references to the committee that have been received. One is listed on the main work programme report on page 22 and relates to door signage in private hire vehicles. The licensing officers were preparing to bring a report to the committee next summer to review the effectiveness of the signage anyway, so it's proposed that that will be the response to this reference. The second reference is found in the addendum that was circulated to members earlier this week and published on the website. It's a request from the chair of the South LAC committee following a public question at their last meeting. The committee is asked to consider whether they wish to add anything further to the response which has been provided from the service. There's a couple of changes that were discussed at the pre-meet last week in the report, and these relate to adding dates to items that were on the work programme but not assigned to a committee. So these were the hostile vehicle management, which is proposed to add to the March meeting, safety at sports grounds, to add to February with the option to move to March if needed, and the same for the parking fees. And then the proposal to move the sexual entertainment venue to the March meeting. I'll hand over to officers to answer any questions on that. Thank you.
Thank you. So just on the question of the green bins that's come round, we did have discussions of this in briefings, and I think that the thinking is that we are due a large consultation on waste strategy anyway, fairly soon. So we should look at this question again during that. Whether it is done in the same consultation, or whether we write specifically to the users of green bins saying what do you feel about the collection period, we will consider then. I think that's probably a fair summary, isn't it? Okay, so any other comments on the work programme? Shannon?
Sorry, can I just ask what hostile vehicles are? It sounds like sort of we're in a war zone in Carver Street.
Yes, I think that's more or less it. Richard?
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor. Yeah, hostile vehicle mitigation is part of, it's used by terrorists. It's where they get a vehicle, they hijack a vehicle and drive that into pedestrians. So hostile vehicle mitigation is the bollards you've seen on Tudor Square and the gates in its simplest form. It's just protecting our public spaces, which we have a legal duty to do.
I don't think we can call it something else, and I think that's what it's called in legislation now. Tim?
Yeah, hostile vehicle sounds a bit like Transformers, doesn't it? You know, sort of thing. But anyway, the sexual entertainment venues, this has been ongoing for years, but we're delayed, aren't we? You know, and it's still TBC. Have we got anything, you know, I know it's down for the 14th of February 2024. Is there an expectation that's going to come to us as a first question?
I think there's still some doubt over it because there are, I mean, there has to be a consultation, a fresh consultation on it. That's a fairly tight timescale to do that, in my view, to bring it to March. But I think it depends on officer resource.
Has the consultation happened yet?
No. And I think I've asked for.
I think your doubts are well founded. Then.
I've asked for a discussion with members, you know, before we go to consultation, just to be clear that we're asking the right questions. So yeah, I have my doubts about that.
And on the additional on the green bin collection, one of the things I was going to say is potentially when you're talking about consultation there, we know who pays the green bins. That there could be a, you know, they obviously sign up, and then probably an email address that they could be asked whether they would be prepared to pay extra for it as a first tranche of that, rather than trying to dip it with lots of people who don't bother having a green bin collection. Because the people that potentially want the extension will be people who already pay for it anyway, I would guess.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, that's a question to look at when we consider the waste strategy consultation. But it is due this coming year, so we can certainly do that. Sinead.
Sorry, because I've got glue ear along with all these other things. Did you say that the sports ground safety thing is going to come in March?
It's on for February, but there's potential that it would be March instead. So yeah, aiming for February, but it could.
And is that to go on the committee agenda, or is that just the briefing things? It says it's not been allocated, it's just going to have a briefing, is that right?
I don't know if, Richard, are you able to comment on that? Whether the safety at sports ground is going to be a briefing or a decision report?
Yeah, thank you. The intention about bringing the policy is for a decision. So it's how we operate our sort of safety at sports grounds. So that's Alderton, Sheffield Wednesday, Sheffield United, etc. It's long overdue, as councillors will be aware. There's a glut of policies for numerous reasons haven't been reviewed. So this is part of this tranche, trying to get these updated and reflect where we are now currently. So we'd like to get it, if not to the February one, definitely to the March one, so we can get that signed off and start to deliver it.
Okay, and who else do we consult with and talk to about this? Are there supporter associations? Do we talk to the police? Is it a meeting where we'd actually like to, or is it a policy where we ought to have some sort of meeting with interested parties, or are we, so that we make sure we're not making policy on our own?
Thanks, Councillor. Yeah, that's exactly it. So there'll be supporters groups, it'll be the clubs themselves, the sports clubs, and you're absolutely right, that wider consultation. And again, that's not been done previously, so we want to get this time right.
Sorry, are we going to be using the new consultation exciting stuff that Governance Committee has asked to be piloted? I can't commit to that, but yeah, it could be an option. I need to set that way and speak to officers in the service, but yeah, it could be an option, Councillor. Please, and sorry, do I have to declare an interest that my child has a season ticket at Sheffield Wednesday, and I like him to be safe?
Thank you. Any more comments on the work programme? Can we take that as agreed? I'll take that as silence as the assent of the meeting. Next item is the connected by water assets, infrastructure and sewer management from Yorkshire Water. Do you have, please come to the table. Do you have a presentation for us? Or? Yes, excellent. Right, let's have that. Oh, do you want to introduce yourselves first and then, yeah. No. And I would say thank you for coming. We're looking forward to this.
Thank you, Chair, for welcoming us to the committee today. We work closely with officers at Sheffield City Council And so this is a good opportunity to engage with councillors as well. I'm aware you have several committees, maybe with overlapping areas of responsibility. So we do have quite a broad range of information to share today. And if you feel that would be useful to share with other committees, then we can share this in written format as well. So I am joined by two of my colleagues today. Well, first of all, I'm Tim Myatt. I'm the Head of Corporate Affairs at Yorkshire Water. So that means engaging with councils, MPs, environmental groups across Yorkshire. And then I'm joined by Adam Ashman, who is our Head of Strategic Planning and has a background in wastewater management and also in our partnerships across Yorkshire. And by Nathan Sunderland, whose background is more in clean water and our investment in that area. And so hopefully we should be able to ask any questions, answer any questions across sort of the scope of our activities. And what we're going to focus on today in the presentation is around our investment and activities around resilience of our network and our investment over the coming years. And that will include focusing on the Connected by Water partnership, which Yorkshire Water is an enthusiastic member, along with the 4 local authorities in South Yorkshire and the Environment Agency, and that is largely around resilience of the area as well. We will do our best to answer any questions on specific locations, but we are all sort of coming from a sort of macro approach to how we invest in our networks, and therefore we might have to go away and come back with a written response if there are any very specific questions about our networks. And also just to add to that, that we do have a quarterly catch-up with officers through Richard's team, and so if there are any issues that come up that we need to work on together, then that would be a good format to do that moving forward. And so as we now turn to the presentation, I think there are a few things which I just wanted to cover from a Yorkshire Water wide approach before we go on to look at our Connected by Water and our clean water networks. And so we are regulated in 5-year investment periods. So we have an economic regulator, Ofwat, and an environmental regulator, the Environment Agency. And we submit our business plans every 5 years. So we have just submitted in October 2023 our business plan for 2025 to 2030. And that will cover both what we expect to spend on our operations, so that's keeping the networks running, but also the enhancement spend that we intend to do, which is what do we intend to improve and make better in terms of the outcomes for customers. So we are currently within the investment period running from 2020 to 2025. So it's just worth bearing that in mind when we're having discussions around what we're spending now and what we intend to spend from 2025 onwards. Alongside those investment planning, we also have recently adopted a new corporate strategy. So that's a 10-year approach to what we want to be doing as a business, what we want to be focusing on. And that tagline there at the top, a thriving Yorkshire, right for customers, right for the environment, is what we've decided that our ambition is to be as a company. That's what we want to aim for, and we want to play our part in achieving that as well. And we have a series of actions that we're taking underneath to support that ambition, such as modernisation across the business to ensure that we know what's happening with our assets when, and so we can predict issues before they arise, and also working in partnership across Yorkshire to make sure that we're doing things effectively. And so as we've gone across the current investment period of 2025 to 2030, we are improving our performance across on our key metrics. And we're also arriving at the end of the investment period. So therefore the planning and feasibility studies and the schemes that we've been developing across that period are now coming into fruition, and therefore we are expecting to be spending a lot of money across this financial year and the next financial year in schemes which we have been developing. And an example is on this slide at the moment. That's at Blackburn Meadows, where we are currently in the process of investing £40 million in phosphorus removal from our treated effluent. So Blackburn Meadows is one of the largest treatment works in wastewater treatment works in Yorkshire. It is the catchment for much of the wastewater from the Sheffield area. It's down by Meadowhall, as you're probably aware if you drive along the M1. And that big investment there is about making sure that what comes out of that treatment works after it's been through the treatment process, there is a lower amount of phosphorus, and therefore it improves the river health of the Don. And so that's the sort of investment we're having now across the region as we reach the end of the investment period. Next slide, please. So as we look at our planning for 2025 to 2030, we are in the middle of that business planning. So a very quick overview is that in 2022, the government released its strategic policy statement for the water sector. Our financial regulator, Ofwat, worked with our environmental regulator to come up with a methodology of what they would like us to be investing in between 2025 and 2030. We then draw up our business plan based on the guidance that we receive, and we submitted that business plan at the start of October 2023. We are now in a process of exchanging lots of questions and answers with our regulators, where we're talking about where they're asking us for specifics, and then we expect to receive a draft determination by May 2024, and then following some more toing and froing and conversations, a final determination in December 2024. And so that will allow some greater clarity at that point around where we will be investing between 2025 and 2030, although we can give you a steer now on what's included in our business plan that we've submitted. The other thing to just add on that is that we do a lot of local engagement as well throughout our business plan creation. Whilst over 95% of what's included in our business plan is directed from at a national level to all companies, we have included some investment in that plan as well, which has come through local engagement. And one of the main pieces of engagement we do is with the Yorkshire Leaders Board, which includes all of the leaders from across Yorkshire. And we are also engaging, as well as with the main board, with a subgroup which is led by your own council leader, actually. And that's a subgroup of 4 council leaders from across the region, one for each of the regions of Yorkshire. Next slide, please. So this is a very high-level overview, and there won't be specifics for Sheffield here, but this is just saying what's in our plan that we've submitted to Ofwat. So overall, it's a £7.8 billion plan for the region, and that has gone up by over £2 billion from the current investment period. So it's really is ramping up what we're going to be spending across Yorkshire. And there are some key drivers in there, one of which is around water security and water resources, because we need to plan for the long term, and we have a water resources management plan which looks 25 years ahead to make sure that we have water for the region. And then we're also investing in environmental outcomes. So we'll come on to more of the specifics in a moment when Adam speaks, but we have put about £1.3 billion worth of investment in that plan aimed at storm overflows and reducing the amount of discharges. Now, upping investment does mean that we will be asking customers to pay more as well, but in doing so, we know that it's a particularly difficult time affordability-wise for customers anyway in the economic conditions. And so we are planning to double the amount of customers who are accessing financial support, and also to work closely with councils and debt support agencies to ensure that people have access to our schemes, because we aren't always the first port of call for people looking to reduce their outgoings. Next slide, please. So just to sort of sum up what that sort of big picture that I've tried to present, we are approaching a new 5-year investment period, and so a lot of our focus is setting ourselves up to deliver what's in our business plan. And at the same time, we're also looking at our corporate strategy and how that means that we need to be set up as a business, what we need to be focusing on to be able to deliver this enhanced amount of investment. And I think on that note, I will hand over to Adam just to go through some of the details about Connected by Water and our wastewater networks.
Perfect. Have I done that right? Yes, I have. Perfect. Thanks, Tim. So yes, my name's Adam Ashman. I'm Head of Strategic Planning at Yorkshire Water. That means that I get involved with creating the business plan that Tim's just talked about, and as well as some of the ongoing activity for Yorkshire Water, one of which is our strategic partnerships. So we have a number of really key strategic partnerships where we work with other organisations and local authorities to deliver a set of outcomes that is greater than we could deliver if we acted in isolation. So Connected by Water is one of those key partnerships. Has anyone, well, I hope you have you all heard of Connected by Water before? Yeah, a few hands going up. Great. Okay, so, well, Connected by Water is all about how we manage flood resilience in South Yorkshire. Flooding is a really complicated thing to manage. Water flows across private property and public property through rivers. You know, it doesn't discriminate. It just goes wherever gravity takes it. And the management of it is complex. And Sheffield and South Yorkshire have had I guess, their unfair share of flood events over the past, some really significant incidents. So it was acknowledged that really the way to tackle that is through a partnership working across boundaries and across organisations, focused on how to create the right outcomes for the area. And so that came together in November 2019 with the formation of the Connected by Water partnership. The previous chair was Tom from Sheffield. That chair has now passed to Colin from South Yorkshire, combined authorities, and you can see the logos of all the organisations that are involved at the bottom of the slide. And it's I guess still a young partnership, but it's a maturing partnership, and there's lots of focus through the governance that exists in terms of creating the action plan, and there's a link to that in the slide pack, but then also delivering those actions that really do help to create greater resilience for the communities in South Yorkshire and obviously in particular in Sheffield today. So on the slide there, you've just got a couple of the measures that we're on with deploying at the moment. And when I say we, I mean the partnership. Some of these are led by Yorkshire Water, some of them are led by Sheffield or other partnership members such as the Environment Agency. And the top one there, Source to Sea, is an example of an EA-led initiative. And that's around using nature-based solutions, which I'm sure you're familiar with, but how we use natural techniques, natural flood management to slow the storm flow, retain it up in the catchments and stop it flowing down into the communities. We've got the flood risk visualisation dashboard identified there. We've also got the education programme. So this is an exciting education programme aimed predominantly at schools. Hopefully you can all still see slides. There we go. And that's been developed specifically for Connected by Water, and it uses the Lego lessons that Yorkshire Water education team have deployed elsewhere, and that helps to educate people about flood risk. It uses almost a programming lesson to help identify things that younger children can do to contribute to reducing flood risk. We're actually rolling that out now, and there's an opportunity for schools to get involved. So if there are schools in your areas and you think that that's something they'd benefit from, they can access that through the Connected by Water website, and we can get people involved. So a really good opportunity. We've got a big public communications campaign. Again, that's pointing people, signposting people to how they can reduce flood risk for themselves. as well as the activities that's going on by Connected by Water and the partner organisations. There's been a good example of how the partnership can deliver better outcomes across the different organisations. There's different strengths that we can lean on. So in this particular example, we used the Yorkshire Water's procurement route for getting access to the support for the website, which has been developed, and it just means that we can act in a more agile way. Something that I find quite exciting is the combining of data and sharing of information. So maybe not that exciting, but when you're in the world of planning investments, having visibility of where other organisations are going to be working, I call it the Carlsberg moment, where if we can all align our activities and get in and make a more efficient investment and deliver better outcomes, then absolutely we definitely need to be doing that. And then the piece down the bottom there talks to the investment that Tim's identified. So Yorkshire Water are planning a big investment in our wastewater network and clean water network over the coming AMP. And it's how we leverage that data sharing to make sure that we're looking for the point investments that we'll be doing on things like combined sewer overflows as an example, how we use maybe surface water separation techniques, leaning in to the Sheffield initiative around grey to green, and start to bring bigger outcomes together for those initial investments. So if we just skip on to the next slide, please. So to date, these are some of the outputs that the project or the partnership has delivered already. To date, they tend to be activities that were already in the different organisations' plans. Planning for some of these big infrastructure activities takes time, and we're sort of 3 years into that now. There's a couple of examples of the type of things that we've been doing, and there's a pipeline of more things to come. If we go on to the next slide, we'll see the storm overflow investment. So this is, on the left-hand side, you've got a list of combined sewer overflows that are within this area, and they are areas that Yorkshire Water are investing in between now and the end of April 25, sorry, so that's in the next 14 months sort of timescale. And those are the areas where we're looking at how do we make those grey to green choices. We call it a nature first strategy. It's how we look to expand out the opportunity and say, how can we, as well as delivering our Environment Act commitments of reducing storm overflows to watercourses, how can we look at creating additional value for the areas in which we're operating in, and whether that's creating spaces, sustainable drainage spaces, or removing surface water from the system altogether, activities like that. Are there any questions about any of those on there?
Yeah. Ooh, what's happened? Yeah. Thank you for that, Adam.
That's all right.
On your screen on the left there, you've got Cudworth, Sheffield S72 postcode.
Yep.
Is that on the border with Sheffield? Because I'm pretty sure Cudworth is Barnsley.
Okay. Yeah. So we'll use postcodes, and it'll have been a list that someone's pulled together to aid it. Now, what we'll probably find is there'll be the flip somewhere where there's an asset that isn't identified as a Sheffield postcode that may be within your areas. But that is one thing we've been looking at how to do, isn't it, in terms of display. So our information is aligned to the shapefiles that exist internally. So it tends to point to things that we will use. We are looking at how we can break that down. So when we talk about that big investment, people rightly want to know, well, what does that mean for our community? That is a very laborious task at the moment, but it's something we're looking at how we can give that information to you guys better.
I'm going to have to peer at that legend to see what really is going on in that map. But yes, it's a data sharing challenge, isn't it? So getting the boundaries of the communities right. Mike will lend his expertise to you and share some of his data. Are you wanting questions on this in particular, or should we move on and take questions at the end?
You can, if that's how. Yeah, I'm easy either way.
I think that, and yeah, let's do that. Thank you.
Yeah, so I will briefly touch on the map, and then I'll hand back to Tim. But so the map talks about, we have something called a drainage and wastewater management plan. So that is a 25-year view into the future, which looks at how we will manage our wastewater assets in the long term. And the view we're looking at there is the view of when each of those investments is planned over the next 25 plus years now. So you'll see every particular CSO in the area, and then the different colours denote which of our investment periods, and those are those 5-year AMP periods, asset management plans as we call them, that they're going to land. Now we try to group those into logical areas so that you can get the biggest benefit at a time. There's also a view that says sometimes those are priorities, so because of the watercourse that they're interacting with, there'll be a priority, and there's an indication on there for that as well.
Just to add, Chair, that we have shared this information with all connected by water councils, so council officers will have this, and we can share it again if they'd like to have it and share it with members for each of the overflows, which 5-year period they are planned for investment.
Yeah, if we can just have that circulated to members, that'd be great. Thank you.
If we can move to the next slide, please. So I think the other side of what water companies do that isn't, or at least water companies who own land and have a large amount of reservoirs, is about the way in which we manage that land. So Yorkshire Water are the second largest landowner in Yorkshire. In this area, our main area of land holding is up near Langsett and the Langsett group of reservoirs. But we do have several other reservoirs where we may not own a large amount of land around it, but we do own some operational land. And so we're very aware that when people talk about resilience, it is partly resilience of our networks, but it's also resilience to climate change, to the causes of climate change, and to ecological loss as well. And therefore, we just wanted to highlight some of the schemes we have going on. So at Redmires, we have a piece of work on encouraging people to visit the site and to access nature. And we also have some habitat restoration and species introduction as well with waterfowl activity there. And then at Underbank, which is the closest reservoir to Stocksbridge, we have a quite significant tree planting scheme going on there with around 10,000 trees going in. And that is, again, part of a big piece of work we have going on that group of reservoirs from Langsett down to Stocksbridge, which is one of our gateway sites where we really do try and make it as accessible as possible for people to go out and to experience nature. And part of that has been building a series of safe walkways and bridle paths from Stocksbridge up to Langsett itself. Next slide, please. And then I think what we just wanted to highlight here is that because we have this piece of land holding up near Langsett, and we take our responsibility around land management very seriously for carbon attenuation and for carbon attenuation, for water attenuation and for water quality are our three main reasons for managing land, that we work with local authorities, with universities, with NGOs to get the most benefits we can from that land. And actually we have some very good partnership working going on with the Rivers Trusts in the area and with the Yorkshire Wildlife Trust as well. And so that's work that we're always looking to develop and to bring local authorities into. Next slide, please. And this is, I mentioned there, partnership working. Some of you may be familiar with Niagara Weir, where there was recently a fish pass opened. We have a series of schemes across Yorkshire around fish pass opening, and that's enabling fish to get higher up some of the rivers in Yorkshire than they have for an awful long time. Because one of the main blockers tends to be the challenges along the physical challenges as you go along the river. And then because of our significant land holding in the area, we also do a large amount of peatland restoration as well, and that tends to be partnership working because we do it on our land, but we also do it in catchment areas and fund partnerships such as Moor for the Future, which do peatland restoration off our land but within our catchments. So therefore we have a real interest in making sure that the water quality in those areas is high, because then it makes our treatment processes simpler. Next slide, please. And on that note, that's a nice segue into clean water networks, which Nathan will take us through.
Thank you. First of all, excuse me, I've got a cough, so if I do keep coughing, apologies. If you could just move on, I'll just give you an overview of a couple of pieces of work that will be taking place in the Sheffield region over the next couple of years, and then I'll finish off with what our plans are from a clean water networks perspective between 2025 and 2030, but that's obviously dependent upon our determination from Ofwat. So on the slide, the map's probably not that clear to see, but we've got a programme of work specific to Sheffield to reduce the risk of customers receiving discoloured water. And it's obviously accepted that when you turn your tap on at any point of time in the day, you expect the water to be crystal clear. Unfortunately, it's very rare, but we do get instances where sedimentation in the water mains does come through to customers' taps, and it just gives like a brown tinge to the water, which is not acceptable. So we're doing a piece of work within what we call water supply zones, and they're coloured on the map there. And it's basically an area that's fed from a specific water treatment works. And we're doing what's called trunk main conditioning over the next 3 years to reduce that risk of discoloration to residents in Sheffield. And the way we do that, the beauty of it is it's non-intrusive, so it doesn't result in us relaying lots of mains and causing major traffic management problems in and around the area. In a controlled way, we increase flows within the large diameter mains, and it removes that sediment off the mains at such low levels that it's not detectable, and it's within the regulatory guidelines. As I said, it causes no interruption to customer supplies, and it causes very minimal damage to customers from a traffic perspective. So this work will be taking place. There's a lot of investigation work and a lot of planning to go into it over the next 12 months. And then in the calendar year of 2025, that's when all the work will be complete, and we will be in what's called our monitoring year with the Drinking Water Inspectorate to ensure that everything that we've done has improved the service that we give to the residents that are fed by those areas. If you could just move on to the next slide, please. And then in the next few months, we have been looking at areas where we've got poor performance from the Clean Water Network. And when I say that, I mean there's been frequent leaks and mains repairs that need to take place. So in an area quite close to here, I think it's just around Tenter Street in Sheffield city centre, where there's a lot of work going on from a surface water perspective. There's been 19 mains failures in the last 3 years, and it's also caused discoloration. So we are renewing or relining the mains in that area. About half of the mains in this area are made of cast iron, so they're generally old, so we want to start upgrading that infrastructure. So we've been working in collaboration with CISC, which I believe are the partners for Sheffield Council, on some of the resurfacing work that's taking place. So to avoid duplication of traffic management and duplication of disruption to customers, we're going in to do that work in February, which fits around the work that Sheffield Council are doing. So it's a good piece of work from a collaboration perspective, and as I say, it does minimise disruption to customers. We'll also do a social values piece of work to explain the benefits to residents so that they understand that we're not just going in every now and again to do a repair. This will be proactive work that goes in to resolve the problem for the long term. If you can just move on to the next slide, please. And then just oversight over our water mains renewal programme for the 5-year period between 2025 and 2030. We own 32,000 kilometres of water mains across the region. The vast majority are where most people live, i.e. South Yorkshire and West Yorkshire. We're planning on doing a lot more mains renewal within that 5-year period, and we're aware that performance from a mains repair perspective and a leakage perspective needs to improve, particularly in South Yorkshire. So we will be, based upon the modelling that we've done and based upon a good determination from Ofwat, we will be going into those areas in a proactive way to do quite a lot of mains renewal, which will benefit customers. So we're not certain on the exact locations yet. Quite a lot of work still needs to take place from a modelling perspective, but it's just oversight to say that this work is likely to come depending upon as I say, the successful determination from Ofwat, which allows us to invest in the assets. And I think that is the final slide.
Yeah. Chad, just to add that we're happy for these slides to be circulated as well. We appreciate there's a lot of information on there.
Thank you. So I'm going to open this up to questions in a moment. Obviously, much of what you presented on is a collaboration effort between yourselves and a number of other agencies. I think it might be helpful just because I think members have probably may have some questions on that, probably also got questions specifically to yourselves. Would it be helpful just to clarify what water-related assets and responsibilities come under yourselves and what comes under us or the Environment Agency or whoever? Just before we come to the questions, I think it might save a little bit of time.
Yeah, I'll give an answer and then I'll check with Adam that what I've said is correct. So it's not always simple, but I'll try and simplify it. So waterways themselves and the health of waterways is a responsibility for the Environment Agency, and they also have responsibility for any surface water flooding. The highways drainage in the main tends to be looked after by the local authority, so in this case yourselves, but obviously on both of those things, highways and rivers, we have an interest. So highways drains will often connect into our network, into combined sewers, and therefore it could be, if there's a problem, that it's either in the gully itself or it could be caused by something that's in our sewer that's underneath the street. So there's a point there where there can be some confusion, but that's why we work closely with councils. And then on rivers, obviously there's a lot of discussion in media and politics around water companies' impact on rivers, but the simple way of looking at it is that in general our responsibility tends to be our asset. So if our asset is affecting that waterway, then that is our responsibility. But we don't have responsibility for the waterway itself. That is generally the Environment Agency. So it's how our assets are affecting that. And generally that across the board is we are responsible for our assets. And then if we impact elsewhere, then we can be held accountable for that as well.
Thank you. Okay, so I've got a number of questions. Some members have emailed me earlier to say, I think you might have had advance notice of some of the questions we might have been wanting to ask, so hopefully this will all work very, very smoothly. So, Sinead, would you like to go first? And seeing as we've been talking about sewage.
I'm not quite sure how to take that, Joe. We know that our sewerage pipe system stuff, technical language there, is pretty old now. Everybody says it was all sort of Victorian build, which would make it about 150 years old, but also looking at my side of the city, the eastern side, where we would have had during that time housing which was maybe had one toilet per 4 households, and now we have housing where most people have 2 bathrooms per house. We have a proposal that a lot of our housing development in the next 20 years is going to be in the city centre, which is going to be really heavy use, if you like. And we've got the new housing developments proposed for Attercliffe, etc. Then how are these poor old sewerage pipes going to cope with the additional usage which we're expecting to add onto it? Everybody thinks about the fresh water and making sure that everybody has clean drinking water, which I applaud too, but the actual sewerage system of pipes must be getting old. How are we going to renew all of that, plus make sure they can take the increased use which we're going to make of them? And I'll just add also, small side, which is, how is the Fatberg situation going? Thank you.
Thank you. I'll start with Fatberg, because it's in my mind while you're saying it. So, yeah, there was actually a piece of consultation done very, very recently around the use of wet wipes. So wet wipes and fat are the key source of blockages on our network. Really high proportion, something like 90% of blockages is caused by those two things. So we have a sewer maintenance programme, and Sheffield's got some of our biggest sewerage infrastructure in the county, and the team will be out most nights with big machines clearing out fatbergs and proactively removing them before they can leak off and become blockages that cause problems. I'd much rather talk about data, but anyway, that's where we are. So it is a challenge. Now, I hope that there will be a move to ban plastic-containing wet wipes as a minimum, and then move to look at more degradable, biodegradable type solutions, just because it creates a waste that we then deal with anyway. It goes to incineration, landfill, that kind of outlet ultimately, and we don't need it. So that's the Fatberg. In terms of the sewerage system that we have, it is old. I guess we have plumbing that was created in something called a combined system. So led in London with the way they designed their system down there, the rest of the country followed suit, and we have a combined network where people can connect to and discharge foul waste and surface water into the same pipe. That's not good, ideal at all anymore. And as you add in the increased intensity of rainfall, we're seeing more and more escapes from that combined network, and that's where the sewer overflows come in. So the answer is one of, I talked about the drainage and wastewater management plan and that long-term view of our waste assets. The answer is that we need to replumb the infrastructure. We need to create a separated system. So we need to take the surface water out, and we look to manage that through natural flood management type solutions. We're doing a big program of installing water butts, so allow people to retain and then use that water. That also helps with our reducing per capita consumption. So on the clean side, part of our water resources strategy is to reduce the amount that customers need, because they can do things like watering their plants with the water butt water. And that all leads to less surface water getting into the system. But absolutely, we also need to do an activity of replumbing. So when Nathan talked about the large investment in the clean infrastructure, we also have a big increase planned for the waste infrastructure, where we will physically be going in and looking at where will we need new strategic sewers, and how do we replace existing with that separated system.
Thank you. So, so I've seen Alex, you put your hand up earlier, didn't you? So, and Christine, you put your hands up. I've got Mike and I've got Tim and Sue. So let's.
Am I allowed to just come back and ask what the time scale for that is?
For the separation of the...
For the, you're saying, you know, we're going to have a look at all of this and make sure that, you know, what time scale are you keeping up with, if you like, with the developments when we're talking about increasing the number of households, for instance, in the city centre? Are you going to be up to speed and ready?
No, we're not in front of that at the moment. So at the moment we can comment on development, but we're not a statutory consultee. So we do look at have we got the capacity for those developments, and we do look at investing where there are specific developments. Part of the changes that will come, we'll look at in terms of how we can be more involved in that process, how we can have sight of where developments are planned, and then through the drainage and wastewater management plan, even then prepare with those strategic connections so that areas can be unlocked for redevelopment. But we're not in front of it at the moment. So yeah, there will be areas that look to be developed that we don't have the optimal infrastructure in place for now.
Thanks. Now I've got hands. Everybody's hand is up, as is mine. So I hope we can rattle through these reasonably promptly, because I don't want to spend too much longer on this. Tim.
There's something that's come up, but I mean, this is additional. You're talking about what Sinead's just said. Now, are you working with the council local development plan on creating pumping stations, etc.? Because I've had it in the east of England before, where there've been lots of developments before I moved up here, where basically they weren't Anglia Water as they were not putting in infrastructure with the developments, and then the capacity was exceeded. Is this so? You're just looking at what may happen rather than actually being proactive. And are you working with the council and the local plan to make sure that we don't have this situation which regularly happened in the east of England, where capacity was exceeded before any new pumping stations, etc., sewage treatment was put in place?
I'll take that one, please, Chair. Yes, we are working with councils. I mentioned previously about our business planning and the Yorkshire Leaders Board. We had several sessions on that purely about the drainage water management plan, and councils were able to feed in where they are planning to develop under their local plan. So that happened at the time. And I would just add that actually Sheffield City Council is one of the councils that we work closest with, and particularly with James Mead and other members of Richard's team who really do provide detailed feedback about the plans in Sheffield.
Okay, I understand, because that's specifically why you working with Sheffield City Council on the local plan to make sure that we don't have, that we can forward plan and that it is in place in advance rather than in arrears, as so to speak. Anyway, the question I want to ask is quite often, I get residents who complain about what they call now utility access covers rather than manhole covers anymore. And forever with residents which are making a noise, or the bus seems to be falling through them or whatever, I have this ping pong between Yorkshire Water and Amy saying, yes, it's us. No, it's not us. No, it's not us, but it's Yorkshire Water. Or Yorkshire Water saying, no, it's not us, it's Amy. How does, and when you gave your presentation, I wasn't quite clear who is responsible for these when it's one of your drains underneath and the road's fallen apart around it.
So the first thing I would say is if there's a cover causing a problem, then
it's finally been fixed after several years, but I know that there are others, and I've had people tell me that there is this ping pong that happens quite often between when a resident has an issue, that they'll presume that the drain is your responsibility, and then you'll say it's Amy's responsibility, and then Amy say no, it's your responsibility, and then it goes backwards and forwards. So whose responsibility are these covers when it goes straight directly onto a Yorkshire water drain in the street?
So and when you talk about Amy, is that in the context?
Amy are our highways contractor, so they maintain our highway infrastructure.
So it's clarifying if it's a Yorkshire Water asset or a council asset, right? Okay. So if it's connected to a surface water sewer or a combined sewer or a foul sewer, and it's in the public highway or in a footpath, and it's a cover, then it would be Yorkshire Water's responsibility. If there is a chance that it may not be, if it's related to some other asset, there's a complication now with a new something called a NAV, which is for new developments. It can be a different entity that owns and operates the water and wastewater infrastructure, but I'm not sure that we've got any of those here. So yeah, in general, if it's related to our infrastructure, then it would be for Yorkshire Water to do.
Marvellous.
Good to have that somewhat clarified.
I think whoever's asset is responsible for it. Seems and the Yorkshire Water ones, do they say Yorkshire Water on them as opposed
Sometimes they do.
Sometimes they do.
But yeah, depending on when it was created. Some of them have been quite old, but predate Yorkshire Water. But if there's any queries, I would just people can ring the 0845 number and it can be reported. There's the agents can check the sewer record and identify the asset from that.
Okay, let's move on. Alexei.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a few quick questions, probably. So, in my ward, we have some woodland that is frequently used by members of the public for dog walking and children playing. But unfortunately, they're frequent sewage discharge into the Mears Brook. Now, this is only permitted by the Environment Agency during periods of high rainfall. I was just wondering how many instances of illegal discharge there have been. And this may have been in the map, but what infrastructure is Yorkshire Water investing in to ensure that sewage discharge into rivers such as the Mears Brook will be avoided in future?
So I think Chair can provide a general answer to that rather than focusing on the specific location, because I don't have that data in front of me. But I think when we talked earlier about the map that showed every overflow in Sheffield, we have that for all of our 2,200 overflows across Yorkshire. And the reason we have that is because in August 2022, the government released its storm overflow discharge reduction plan, which set targets for us to achieve at each of our overflows. So for a general overflow by 2050, it needs to be discharging less than 10 times per year. And for an overflow that is near a site of natural importance, environmental importance, or is near a bathing water, a designated bathing water, they must discharge less than 2 times.
In a bathing season?
In a bathing season, yeah, for ones near bathing waters. Now, that figure of 2050 can sound very, very far into the future, but what I would say is that when we showed that map, it had the fact that we were going to be investing across our assets to sort of work in a sustainable way, in a manageable way, and in a way that's affordable across that period to invest, to bring them down to those targets. Now, I'm not sure if the overflow you mentioned is a site of specific environmental importance, and so it's a priority site or not, but if you'd like us to come back to you on that point, it's Mears Brook, isn't it? Yeah. Mears Brook, then we can send an answer to you and also to the clerk, so it can be circulated if need be.
Yeah, we'll appreciate that. I must say I consider it to be bathing season all year round.
Just that.
But Alexei, did you have a number of questions? Sorry, go on.
Yeah, come back on that as well, Alexei. So in terms of the visibility of that information, so we are in the process of finalising and then publishing a spills map. So that'll be almost real time, and it'll be accessible through the website, the Yorkshire Water website, and that will give people a view of has an asset or is an asset spilling, so a combined sewer overflow, and that's linked to the event duration monitors, EDM monitors. Now currently that's all done in a lag, and we do an annual report, but going forward it'll be much more useful for people who actually want to use the water bodies.
Just to add some context to that, 'cause it's a really important point, that is likely to be launched in mid-January. So that's the date. We have just finished installing our final EDM on all of our 2,200 sites, and we're making sure now that we have the process so that data will be reported within an hour of a discharge happening, so we can verify that it's not faulty data, with some crazy numbers coming out. So that will happen hopefully by mid-January, and what it will also have on there is information on whether it's rained in the locality, and we'll use that. And so to your point about the legitimacy of why that asset is discharging, it should be very clear whether it is raining in that point and whether it's rained in the last 48 hours, because obviously networks drain down to overflows in a catchment type approach. So that should be a lot more clarity for people, and for people who enjoy open water swimming, to be able to see if there have been any discharges near where they're planning swimming.
Yes, most welcome. Alexi, so did you have much more? I mean,
yeah, just a couple more.
Do you want to ask them both?
Yeah, one is about assets that Yorkshire Water owns in Sheffield. I was wondering if these could be made available in a public-facing database, so we can, so it's open and transparent and would help to monitor flood risks.
We don't, as a matter of course, release information on our assets because we are a piece of critical national infrastructure. So there are risks, especially on the clean water side, of people interfering with our network. But it really depends on what it is that you're talking about. So we do share a lot of information on our drainage, water and surface water networks with local authorities because it's obviously an obvious interest. So there are public maps. I'll just hand over to Adam in case he's got anything to add there.
Yeah, that's right. So there is all of our records, the statutory records are available for people if they're interested in progressing a planning application or something like that. So there is access to that, and I believe there's a terminal. There'll be terminal in council buildings that people can use. If there was something like a specific piece of land or something like that you were thinking about, then people would get in touch and request info about that one.
Thanks. Okay.
Final one, sorry.
Final one. Well, in that case, Alex, I'll come back to you because I want to give everybody a chance.
It's a really quick one.
I'll come back to you if necessary, if there's time. Mike.
Thank you, Chair. You're giving us some figures for the investment in river health, 1.7 billion that you're hoping to spend over the next few years, and 1.27 billion for flooding, and there's also monies for future water. But when Nathan came to explain about the mains repairs, you flagged up that you are putting more resource in, but we didn't get an actual indication of what that would amount to for the Sheffield and South Yorkshire area.
I've not got it specifically for Sheffield. We've proposed £360 million across the region for the 5-year period between 25 and 2030. That is dependent upon it being approved by the regulator, and then there's modelling that's ongoing to say where is the most beneficial areas to invest. So I can't commit to saying we will spend X amount in Sheffield at the present moment in time. But there will be substantial investment because, a lot of the mains are where people live, but, as you would expect, so it will be an area of focus.
And is that because there has in the past been a backlog and you're having some difficulty in getting on top of the mains leaks? I say that because in my ward right now there are two mains leaks which haven't been addressed for several weeks.
We prioritise it based upon the volume of water coming out. So sometimes there's a backlog when there's a period of cold weather, and it does shock the network. That does occur. From a regional perspective, we have met the leakage target over the last few years, so overall there's not been a backlog. But if there is areas where there's frequent mains failures, we will repair them as quickly as possible. But also, as I showed on the Tenter Street one close by to here, frequent repairs, it means it's more beneficial to renew the main rather than going in and upsetting customers and doing fixes rather than full renewals.
So yeah, so you you'd plan to leave a leak for a period in order to do a more substantial repair.
We would never leave it. We would repair it.
Yeah.
But then, if it's frequently, if we're carrying out frequent repairs, it is more beneficial to do a renewal rather than incorporate cost after cost after cost.
Yeah.
I think, Mike, you're thinking of Amy and the Cat 2 potholes, aren't you?
No.
That's,
well.
Yes,
there is a similarity,
yeah.
isn't there?
Sue.
Yeah.
Thank you. My questions are sort of really around communications in sort of both directions. So my first question is about the communications with members of the public when you are undertaking works, repairs, closing roads and that sort of thing. I think everybody appreciates these things have to happen, they have to be done, and sometimes it will be hard to predict how long it's going to take. But is there any way that you can improve the communications with local residents via the council, if necessary, to make sure that people, rather than just getting angry and what they then do, of course, is come to us, actually have some better information, because I think that would be really valued. My sort of related question to that is about communication in the other direction. So I am very fortunate to represent the ward that includes both Redmires and the beautiful Porterbrook. I have had questions in the past, and one question in the very recent past, about 10 days ago, from residents, both about Redmires and in this more recent case about discharges into the Porterbrook. And it's actually really difficult to find out how to get that information. I note the answer you say about the proposal to put that information more on the website, so I really welcome that. But I just wondered, how can we as councillors or members of the public contact you to get information? Because I went on your website, and to be honest, it's really easy to find out how to pay a bill. It's a lot harder to find out how to ask those sort of questions. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think the first thing to say about communication between councillors and Yorkshire Water is that's a job of my team. So I will circulate my team's email address, and so that is a route for councillors to come in. And I'm conscious that Councillor Chaplin there mentioned 2 sites that is where he thinks there's leaks. So I was planning on getting in touch with him anyway. So I'll circulate that email address. We mentioned about the near to live discharge map that we are planning on bringing out in January. At the moment, there is a map already on our website which shows the annual return. So you can zoom into your area, you can see where the overflows are, and it tells you what's happened there in previous years, both in terms of the number of discharges, but also the duration of discharges as well. And so also happy to circulate that link as well to councillors. And then bringing back round to sort of general works, I think all of us sat here would share people's frustration when there's roadworks that pop up that you're not expecting. And obviously with Yorkshire Water we have planned works and we have reactive works, and it's obviously very difficult to share information on reactive works because it's often a case of getting out there and solving a problem. On proactive works and capital works, we do have teams whose job it is to contact residents in that area, and that's often through lettered drops, but we also do social media advertising. There might be routes for us to improve our communication with the council as well on this, and we've had conversations with Richard's teams in our quarterly catch-ups that we have about how do we make sure that permits are being put through in time, and how do we make sure that we're having those good communications. So I think that there might be room to improve there. but we do try and get ahead of that work and put it on websites such as One Network, which you might be aware of, that shows all of the roadworks in your area that's planned. Yeah, that's a long answer, but I think we do try and be proactive where we can around planned works.
Yeah, I'll just comment on that as well. I mean, obviously, I'm aware that, and many of our residents are not aware that when a sign goes up saying road closed, it might not be the council. It could easily be yourselves if there's a water leak going on. I have found on some occasions some of those closures to be confusing and inconvenient, and to the point where people are turning around in the road because they've just suddenly come upon it. I won't go into the details, but I think that certainly if you could take more responsibility for those with the public, that would be much appreciated. I don't think if there's any reason it doesn't say road closed, Yorkshire Water at work here kind of thing, which might defer some of the comments coming into our call centre and our email. So yeah, well.
Just on that point, Chair, where we do have works going on, we do normally have a sign that says it's normally permit number, the contractor perhaps on behalf of Yorkshire Water. So we do try and advertise that it's our fault. We don't try and pass things on to the council.
Well, that's marvellous. Well, I think we should have a standard that all works, whoever's doing them, should indicate who it is who's doing them, because I'm sure most of the ones I see around, there's no indication. That would clear everything up. Can we have that as a policy, please? Christine.
Thank you, Chair. My questions are a slightly different question. I just want to say I'm glad you talked about grey water, and I want you to do as much as you can to encourage people to reuse their water and use grey water, so please do that. My questions are about the moorlands, and I know you also mentioned that you're working with Peak District Park or whatever on moorland restoration, which is great. And hope you're doing some rewilding on your own land. But my question is, on the land you own, does any moorland burning take place?
It's a good question, but I think we have a presumption against burning in our contracts. So where possible, we ask that they mow instead. But those conversations are done very much on a sort of one-to-one basis when tenancies come up. And so we have a presumption against burning built into our tenancies. But I can't guarantee that it never happens because of specific sites.
Okay, so you don't monitor?
But we have our tenancy agreements, and if someone was to break a tenancy agreement, then that would be an issue, and we engage closely with groups who are very interested in this and do report to us what's happening on our land, as well as having our own team of surveyors who go out as well.
Thank you. Talib.
Thank you, Chair. My question is, you mentioned about the core investment, about the 20 areas, but I think, well, on screen it was 13 areas, but two of them, they are not in Sheffield, South Yorkshire. S18 is in Derbyshire. So I don't know why they are there and what's linked with Sheffield, or what's benefit to Sheffield while these areas are in Derbyshire. Other question is regarding baiting. How many times do you bait? And especially, S5 area is on, that was in the screen now, for investment improvement. What improvements are going to take place? Is it going to be the network of sewerage? Is it a freshwater network? What networks is going to be? And colouring, how often it takes place? Because, in S5, S4 areas, it's quite often, might be once in a month or once in a quarter, it takes place. coloured water. So, can you explain, please?
Yeah, so I think the point about whether the overflow was in the Sheffield boundary or not is something Adam referenced earlier, which is that we tend to work on catchments and our operational areas, and we're trying to improve now because of the increased interest in our networks over the past few years, the information that we have available on political boundaries, because of course we tend to work on water catchment boundaries, and actually there has been a piece of work that's been ongoing on that. That's actually water sector wide, and there will be a different mapping service to the one we mentioned earlier, which specifically goes into investment on overflows, and that's not within my gift to guarantee when that's going to be, because it's a water sector wide approach, but we are expecting that to be in January or February, but that will be able to get more information on a council political boundary, because we know that's how many of our stakeholders like to operate. On baiting, are you referring to rat baiting there and rodents? Yeah. So this is something that comes up regularly in the quarterly meetings between the council and Yorkshire Water, and we have our manager of our sewer networks in the area who attends that, and there is a process in place for the council to inform us if they think that they have that there are rodents in our network causing a problem. So what I'd say is, if you are aware of specific locations, it'd be good if you either went to Richard or came to me, and then our teams can work together on that, because it's not always our networks that are involved in that, and it's about working out where the problem is in our networks, and then we will do the basic. Nathan, do you want to answer on discoloration in the S5 area?
Yeah, so the first slide that I spoke about is a managed programme of work that will reduce the number of times customers receive discoloured water in the Sheffield region. So over the next few years, the investment that we make will stop, or certainly reduce the frequency of times customers turn on the tap and the water's not the colour that they expect. And we've done this work in other parts of the region, and it's proven to be beneficial for quite low sums of money. So yeah, we're confident that the residents will not receive discoloured water in the future.
What it causes? Can you tell me what it causes for colouring?
So if you get an increase in flow in the water main, you do get bits of sediment that gather on the inside of the water main, just because the water comes from the upland, so you can get manganese coming into it, but also because some of the mains themselves are made of cast iron, you do get fragments of iron that deposit on the main. Then when there's a flow that is higher than the main is used to, it can strip the sediment off the inside, and it ends up discolouring the water and coming through. So what we do as part of the work that I mentioned is we increase flows in a managed way that takes the sediment off in such small amounts that you cannot see it, and it's not in breach of any regulatory limits for iron or turbidity. So it generally occurs if you've got a burst water main and there's water gushing out, it's increased the flow inside of the main, so it just upsets everything. So if we can reduce the number of mains failures that occur, which is what we're planning on doing over the next 5 years, then there'll be less chance of it, but we're also managing flows within the mains better, so that if a main does burst, you're unlikely to get any discoloured water.
Thank you. So I'm going to ask a question. I've got two more hands have gone up for a second go, and I'd like to wrap this up in the next 10 minutes. To be honest, we do have some other items of business to go on. So yeah, so I have two questions really. One is obviously there is a great enthusiasm for open water swimming, and I don't know if there's anything you have to say in terms of some kind of do you see there as possibly a path to some sort of official provision and recognition of that? I realise there are other water sports that go on the reservoirs anyway, aren't there? And there's obviously a route for those things to happen. I would have thought an open water swimming provision could be extremely popular and greatly beneficial. The other thing I just wanted to say is I was privileged to go to the launch of the sustainable urban drainage scheme on Whirlow playing fields in my ward a few weeks ago, which is obviously led by the Environment Agency, but part of this partnership we're talking about. And I've got to say, it's very impressive. It does seem to do a great job. I think we had Storm Babbitt came kind of a couple of weeks after, and downstream from Lim Lane didn't get the flooding it often gets. So maybe that did a good piece of work for us. But the conversation there was very much that this is a marvellous thing, but how on earth do we scale it to the extent required? And given that it's below open fields, and therefore, there's the space to put it in, that's a very different challenge to surface water in urban areas, isn't it? And is there any sustainable drainage you can squeeze into the urban environment that does a similar job there? And is there any way to basically scale it up to the kind of level that's required?
Yeah, so it is a big challenge. So we're looking at different types of sustainable urban drainage solutions. Some fit, you see rainwater gardens down the side of highways, and part of the city's already approach is looking at that type of solution. Then we've got things like we've done a bit of work in Hull with the university there, looking at sustainable drainage at the campus and how we can use that to monitor the throughput and attenuation and just get quite scientific about the design for sustainable drainage systems. But we've also done the Rosmead Street scheme in Hull, where we've looked at permeable paving, so it allows water to soak into the road surface rather than running off it. And in the recent storms, that was a huge success. So it was tested in anger, and the street really benefited. So yeah, it is a challenge. There's lots and lots of development through Yorkshire Water. It's a big thing across the world. How do we deal with more intense rainfall? So we're looking at lots of ideas and options. In terms of you said about open water swimming as well.
I'll have to answer that one, Adam. So we do have a no swimming policy on our reservoirs, and but we are aware of the interest in the topic, and I have relationships with some of the groups who are interested, and I've spoken to them recently. I must emphasise we have that no swimming policy, but we have open channels of communication. We've spoken with people that they've recommended us to speak with where it does happen elsewhere, and we are at the moment in the process of discussions with a formal group about using one of our reservoirs for a one-off event. So, which is a slight change in our approach. So, we do have a no swimming policy. Just to say that again. But we have this. We do have open lines of communication, and so we can hear the views of people who are very interested in swimming in our reservoirs.
Thank you for that. So I've got Alexi, Mike and Shoned. Can I take all three of those in one go quickly, and then I'll hand it back to Yorkshire Water to make any final responses and any final comments, and then we'll close it up. So who was first? Alexi.
Thanks, Chair. Just very quickly, so when carrying out emergency repairs in the city centre, and this is not just Yorkshire Water but a lot of other contractors, they replace paving and stonework with patches of tarmac, and this could change the appearance of the city centre for the worse for months at a time. And I'm just wondering if Yorkshire Water could commit to working with the council contractors so that the original surface is replaced at the time of the works, so only one visit is necessary.
Actually, yes, do answer that separately. Unless you don't comment on them.
I think it's something for me and Richard to pick up in our quarterly catch-ups to see if we can speed that up, or where there's been any problems in the past.
Yeah, I mean, it's a number of contractors I think we have possibly issues with doing that, but the commitment, as I understand it, is to restore it to the condition it was in. It's just that it doesn't always happen straight away, as Alexi pointed out. Okay, Mike.
Yes, it's on the peatland land that's in your portfolio. I mean, I was pleased with the answer that all your tenancies have got agreements not to do any burning of the heather. But do you have a programme similar to Moor's for the future, where you're planting sphagnum moss to stop parts of the landscape that are denuded of vegetation, and gully blocking to slow down the flow of water into the rivers?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And Sean, can I have your question as well?
Yeah, my question was going back to my first train of thought, going back to sewerage, and the huge rise in the development of student blocks in our city, that we have far more students and they have special accommodation, and I imagine that those put a strain on the infrastructure, and I'm concerned that you're not considered to be consultees when we do developments like this, that there must be a time when we have so much of this accommodation that you're saying, ooh, not sure if our infrastructure can cope with this. So is there a thing, I'll use that word, for having you put down as consultees? What's the phrase I'm looking for?
Can we make them consultees on developments that affect the...
Yeah.
Can we do that? Yeah, do you want to answer those two questions and make any final remarks?
Yeah, so we fund, we do fund peatland restoration, both on our land, but also in catchments which affect around our reservoirs. So yes, we do. I haven't been too close to it in the last year, but I believe we have supported Moors for the Future and the Yorkshire Peat Partnership in the past. We also work with the Sheffield and Rotherham Wildlife Trust to do work around some of the reservoirs, such as leaky dams and other activities that are beneficial for water quality and for flood mitigation. So we have a big interest in what happens in the catchments around our reservoirs. And then on the point about whether we're a statutory planning consultee, I would say that most councils tend to be pretty good at asking us about planning applications, especially ones that with a lot of potentially big impact. But we are not a statutory planning consultee. That has caused issues in the past, something we and sector organisation Water UK speak with government about a lot. And it also, I would just say that also where we have good relationships with councils, there are also conversations to be had about progressive planning policies as well, around things like garden roofs or big developments and how you can be innovative with them. And I would definitely say that Sheffield are ahead of most councils in that sort of progressive way of thinking about water management.
Marvellous, thank you. So,
sorry, Joe, no, it's not a question. It was just to say, can we therefore ask PRC, is that right?
PRC.
Yeah, to consider putting Yorkshire Water as a consultee. It doesn't have to be statutory, but ought to be part of the list.
Yeah.
When as part of planning policy, when considering those sorts of developments, maybe we could have a list, or they could put together a list of developments where Yorkshire Water ought to be consulted.
Yeah. Can we do that? Is that? Yeah. Okay. That's minuted. Thank you. So, any final closing remarks? Or
no, we've covered a lot of ground today, and there's been a lot of interest. I mentioned earlier my team's email address, which I will circulate through the clerk to councillors. Obviously, I'm aware we're live online, so I don't particularly want to say it now. But I will. I'll share it around because it's for elected members across Yorkshire to get in touch with Yorkshire Water.
Thank you so much, and thank you for coming. I think it's been really interesting. I mean, I think that the interest from members is reflected in the wider community in having clean and safe water and not having sewage discharge into the rivers and not having the roads dug up all the time. I think we're all very keen on all those things. And lower water bills, that would be nice, wouldn't it? Yeah, that would be nice. But anyway, I guess all this stuff has to be paid for somehow, doesn't it? Thank you. So that concludes that item. Thank you for coming. The next item on the agenda is item 9, budget monitoring. Is this... hi, yeah. You don't come and introduce yourself.
is this going to be an annual event, inviting Yorkshire Water in? Because I might suggest that, you know, obviously you've had it now, so it doesn't matter, but it might be something that would be very useful to do as an annual event for the committee, which I shan't be coming to, but you would all benefit from, I'm sure.
Without you, Sinead, I'm not sure it would be quite so valuable. But we'll consider that in discussions in pre-meetings. Jane.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Jane Wilby, Head of Accounting. The paper gives you an update on the Q2 budget monitoring position for 23-24. All the committees have had the same update during December, so some councillors in the room have already heard this update. The committee's last financial update was in September on the Q1 outturn position. At Q2, the council is forecasting an overspend in the general fund of 17.4 million against a net revenue budget of 487 million, representing a variance of 3.6%. The Q1 position forecasts an overspend of 17.6 million, so not a big movement between quarters, but we did see a large movement of 2 million in the Education, Children and Families Committee due to recognition of some income that wouldn't be received this year from health partners. The 2 million was offset through our capital financing budget, so the economic conditions have continued to yield good interest returns on our investments, and we've had slippage in the capital programme that's delayed our need for borrowing again and strengthened the overall cash position, so interest returns above budget again. Three main areas for overspend in the council are in adult social care, children's social care and homelessness. In adults, we've seen a big investment bringing down the average costs following the spike that we saw in the pandemic, but the service does continue to be challenged by increasing demand and an inflating cost base. In children's, we've got huge challenges from the rising cost of placements, somewhat caused by the limited supply in the city and rising prices alongside a shortage of foster carers to support demand. We also have rising costs of home-to-school transport. The homelessness situation has arisen post-lockdown, coupled with the shortage of affordable housing in the city and a limited range of options. Our use of hotel and bed and breakfast accommodation has reached an unsustainable and unaffordable level. The increase in homelessness is a national issue, and there are now more than 100,000 households in temporary accommodation, which is the highest for 20 years. In spite of these emerging challenges, the £47 million worth of budget savings plans that we put in place as part of the 23-24 budget, however, are currently 80% on track to deliver, with a further 12% that will be delivered in 24-25. The good news is the Waste and Street Scene Committee is forecast to underspend by 1.1 million against the net revenue budget of 66.9 million. The main reason for the underspend is due to the higher income levels in parking services. This is slightly offset by overspends in markets, city centre and environmental regulations. The overall deviation from the budget is less than 2%, which does represent good financial management overall in the committee. The issues faced here in Sheffield are not unique, and councils across the country are experiencing the same challenges and financial context. We've seen 4 local authorities in the past 12 months declare insolvency, issuing 114 notices, Nottingham being the most recent. Sheffield City Council has been able to manage overspends against budget by drawing from reserves for the past 2 financial years, and will do so again this year if no further in-year mitigations are brought forward. We set aside 70 million of our reserves in 21 for budget contingency, and we'll have 13 remaining at the end of the year, but reserves can only be used once, and ours are depleting as our overspends continue. The autumn statement offered no reassurance from government that there will be any additional funding for local authorities. The medium-term financial analysis was presented in September, and it highlighted a £61 million budget gap over the next 4 years, with 18 million falling into 24-25. Services have been developing solutions and have brought forward savings proposals to recent policy committee meetings, and final decisions will be made in December. The local government financial settlement was announced on Monday, and finance colleagues are working through the detail currently to assess the impact on the overall position. On the 21st of December, tomorrow, Strategy and Resources will be asked to make the recommendation on the savings to date to Council. On February 21st, 24, Strategy and Resources will be asked to recommend the full budget to Council. The Council must continue to drive the delivery of budgets, savings plans and tackle those in-year overspends to prevent the budget gap from widening. The committee is asked to note the Council's financial position at Q2 23-24. The Q3 position will be presented to committees in March.
Thank you. Thank you. Just a couple of comments and then I'll throw it open. I mean, just looking at the waste and street team position, I know, I mean, I understand the spirit in which it was said. 1.1 million underspend is obviously good news for the council's financial position. I'm just a little bit concerned looking at the items that make that up. Obviously, parking service is one I think we understand, and I don't think, it's probably fair to say, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think we're expecting that to repeat to the same degree in future years. The street scene and regulation figure is the other one, which is underspent by almost half. I don't know, Richard, if you'd like to speak to what's happening there, because that's actually, on the face of it, potentially quite worrying. If we're, are we carrying an awful lot of vacancies and not doing the job properly? I mean, that would be the concern, seeing a figure like that.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, you'll be aware from briefings that the main overspends are in environmental regulatory services, pest control. So there's a lot of free page all work in areas around Page Hall and Fairvale. We've actually put that on the pressures list as part of the budget proposals for next year. There's also overspends in city centre management through loss of income because of the development work across the city centre and the temperature in commercial income across the UK. It's impacted city centre management. And the last one is around our highways team. We've got some pressures in the service which we're mitigating in year, so that won't be carried forward to next year. So there are a number of challenges, Chair, but we've got plans in place to identify them as pressures for next year, and that's part of the proposals to try and mitigate those.
Thank you for that. I don't think you heard my question. No, I was looking at the street scene regulation row, which is underspent in this report by almost half, which raises a concern that we're just not doing the street scene regulation job that we should be doing. It's a budget of 1.3 million and an outturn expenditure of 0.7 million. I don't know if you could explain that. I mean, on the principle that underspends are not always good, that we are here to deliver a service with the money that we have and to deliver the service at the level that has been agreed. Can you explain what's going on there?
Yeah, sorry, Chair, for that misunderstanding. Just looking at that table now. So the parking services income we've talked about is increase in on-street and also bus lane enforcement, etc. Then we've got some overspends identified on there, and we have got some underspends around street scene and regulations. So these are with markets, street scene and regulations are at markets, city centre management team. Parking services are in there as well. So although parking services are taken out, that's more the enforcement side of parking services. So there are some elements there. There are some vacancies which we are trying to fill. So there are some employment costs there which we're underspending on. But we've got recruitment out to fill those. There is an issue around there in the hub as well, in Place Hub, where we do have a churn of staff, unfortunately, because a lot of those roles are temporary. We are trying to move those to permanent posts to try and make it more attractive. So again, we are carrying quite a few vacancies in there, but we are trying to fill them.
Okay, thank you for that. I mean, carrying vacancies, it does seem that, I mean, it's a big figure to explain by carrying a few vacancies. But anyway, okay, I'll throw it open to members for any other comments. Talib.
How much you've got clean air charges income? Clean air zone charges income, is included, just parking fines are included in that.
So all income is included. So this includes all income and expenditure and parking service. There will be income from bus lane enforcement, on-street and off-street car parks as well, and then there'll be an expenditure against that for staff in parking services. Does that answer your question, Councillor?
Clean air zone.
Clean air zone.
So it's not showing on this figure. So we do, street scene and regulations do collect the income from clean air zone, but then it's transferred straight across to TRC committee. So the actual budget sits with TRC. So our responsibility is the enforcement and the collection, but it actually nets off for our committee against our costs, and then any surpluses are then transferred to TRC committee.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions on this? Otherwise, I suggest we...
Yeah, can I just come back on the,
yes, Richard,
your question? Sorry. Yeah, just looking at that table, street scene and regs is direct to budget. It's labelled up wrong, so it should be the actual direct to budget. So it's where within my budget I've got some surplus funds to offset any particular issues with cars, any particular issues on Highways Maintenance Division Streets Head contract. So that is a surplus, an ongoing surplus, and some of that we've put forward to mitigate some pressures next year to get that out of the budget.
Right, okay, so yes, no, I'm aware of that, so that's where that's come from. Okay, fair enough. Mike?
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Jane, for the report. I think my question is going to be more directed to Richard. And it's so, having looked at the work streams, work programme earlier, and seen that we've got some slippage on some of the policies that we want to bring to committee, is some of the underspend related to vacancies in that area where we could do with employing staff to work on those policies that are currently slipping.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. Particularly around sex establishments, that's sat in the licensing team, which should net off anyway, and rightly so. We generate fees, and you'll recall we've got a paper coming in March to look at a review of those fees. At the moment, in licensing, it's costing the council under the regulation, but it should net off, so we should increase the fees to cover those costs. But we are trying to give real good value to licensees across the city, so that's part of that work we're doing in March to try and mitigate that. In answer to your question around vacancies, we have got a number of vacancies, but we're not holding those vacancies. It's just churn as people are leaving. It does take a while to recruit people and get those into the post. As I mentioned, we have got some temporary posts across the portfolio, which people are coming into, and the temporary aspect just keeps getting extended, particularly around cars. So we are making those posts permanent to make them more attractive, because they've got employment rights as a temporary or permanent employee would have now.
Thanks. Shonid?
Joe, on page 43, 1.7.3, the undeliverable saving on dimming of lighting and reduction to carbon emissions, the actual bit, I was actually quite pleased that we can't do further dimming of lighting in terms of the balance between safety for our residents plus the need to save money. But I just wondered whether there are areas which could do with dimming or could even have lighting switched off between, I don't know, 1 and 4 in the morning or something in some parts. Have we actually examined all that sort of stuff? And apologies if you have, Joe.
Yes, no, we did look at a number of options before coming up with this saving, including certain switches off. But this is where this is sitting now in intensity. I think it's understand not to be legally problematic, I think, at the moment. So it's red, and it's staying red for the time being. I am conscious that we had representations at the last meeting from some people in Walkley saying that they felt it wasn't light enough. I do wonder that where it is not light enough, whether it's generally a design problem rather than a level problem. Because I think that there's a certain range you can go with the lights without it being too dark. But if the light is not shining where it needs to shine, the level doesn't really matter. But largely we have the design that we have, so there's generally not a great deal that can be done about it. Any more comments on this report? If not, can I ask that it is approved? Is that agreed? Thank you. Thank you, Jane. The next item is review of the Moor market service charge. We've had some representations from the traders that they've not had enough opportunity to look at this and to make representations, and so I'm proposing that we defer this until February, if that's agreed by the committee. Is that agreed?
Agreed, Chair.
Thank you. Alexa, yes, go on.
I think we were hoping that we would bring the reviews of the service charges of Moor Market and Crystal Peaks closer together. Are we still going to have?
I think the plan is now that there will be an omnibus paper looking at all the service charges, the energy recharges, and the rents as a whole package, and that will be due kind of in the summer, and hopefully that will set a single policy that does these things in a consistent way. Okay, so the final item is item 11, response to the street tree inquiry. Emily, is this, yeah, do you want to, and David?
Richard as well.
Richard, yeah. Do you want to come and introduce yourselves and speak to the report? Thank you.
Hi, I'm Emily Stanbrook-Shaw, Business Manager in Street Scene and Regulation. Part of my role is supporting the Sheffield Street Tree Partnership.
I'm David Whaley, representing Highways Maintenance Division.
Thanks, Chair. I've asked Emily to come along to answer any detailed questions around the partnership, Sheffield Street Tree Partnership, and then David to answer any questions, particularly around the CIP streets and any technical questions from a highways point of view. So I'm going to present the report, Chair, if that's okay. So Council will recall on the 6th of March 2023, Somart Local KCB published the Sheffield Street Tree Inquiry Report. The Council accepted all the inquiry's recommendations and conclusions on the 19th of June 2023. I'm the lead director for a proportion of those recommendations, which are recommendations 5 to 7, and essentially cover the Streets Ahead contract and the Street Tree Partnership. The elements of the recommendations 5 to 7 include the Town Hall plaque. I'll come into more detail on these there in my presentation. Outstanding core investment programme design and delivery. Resilience of resource for Sheffield Street Tree Partnership. The Streets Ahead contract performance. Town Hall plaque, current delivery. We've been commissioned to deliver a plaque in consultation with STAI, the Street Tree Partnership, and the Public of Sheffield, with an unveiling date of the 6th of March 2024. We're still on schedule, as you can see from the delivery report. We've given our capital deliveries team have come up with a proposal, or two proposals, which I know councillors in the committee have seen. Further to that, STAI gave representations, but they felt it didn't reflect the true issues around the protest. So we're now waiting for STAI to come back with a further proposal. We set a deadline of the 5th of January, and then we'll start a 2-week public consultation with a view of bringing it back to committee for final agreement on which plaque to go forward, with an unveiling and installation on the 6th of March 2024. So at the moment, it's still on schedule for full delivery. Outstanding core investment programme. You'll recall at the point of the tree replacement programme was paused in 2018, there were 78 streets from the original core investment programme. The core investment programme, just to recap, is the initial investment, the 6-year plan around Streets Ahead, resurfacing the majority of streets and footways across the city, installing lighting columns, etc., to get it to a good standard. We've now progressed quite a lot over those few years since 2018. We've now got remaining 26, which have been held on pause during the protest and during the inquiry. We've now committed to deliver designs for those 26 streets by March the 6th, 2024. You'll see from the delivery report we're on an amber, so we've flagged that up via the governance process. There are some risks around that. At the moment, we are on schedule to meet that timescale. So we've got EMI delivering phases 1 to 4, which are listed in the delivery plan, and we've actually outsourced phases 5 to 6 to Mott McDonald's to bring extra resource in to make sure we can meet that agreed timescale. There are blank columns on these phases 5 to 6, which I will update separately via email. We've literally just got those through from Mott McDonald's, but again, they are on schedule to meet the design timescale for the 6th of March. At the moment, the premise has been no disruption to trees, no felling, no issues to street trees at all. And I'm pleased to say on the 26 designs that is being delivered at the moment. When we do start consultation, there may be elements where there's loss of parking to make sure we can save the trees or save any elements of the tree network. That would be when we need to come back following that consultation to yourselves as councillors and part of the Waste and Street Scene Committee for a final decision. But again, the premise, to reiterate, the premise has always been to save the trees. On other elements, we've got a restructure within Highways Maintenance Division, where we're looking at bringing in a new assistant director who, again, I'm pleased to announce starts on the 15th of January. We've got an interim assistant director, which is Divine Melliship, and I know you know from the regular briefings, but a key is to get some sustainability and some stability within the service. So that will be the first part of that. Coming back to the question around the budget, we've done a deep dive within the service, and we've got some vacancies, again, some churning there. Few agency staff, so we are looking at making those permanent to make sure we've got that resilience in the service. So that's underway, and that is on course to be delivered. Resilience of the Resource for Street Tree Partnership. Again, councillors will recall from the regular briefings, we've funded a part-time partnership manager. So this is a really strong step towards the partnership and partnership working across the city. The new partnership manager will work solely to the partnership. We're a key stakeholder in that, but we are funding that post on a temporary provision for a year. If successful, we'd like to extend that and then make it permanent. So it is a trial, it is a pilot, but we're confident that will be successful. The next stage for the partnership is then to look at giving it more autonomy. So the new partnership manager is the first step on that path. As part of that, I attend the partnership meetings on a regular basis as director. I have officers around me who regularly attend, and Amy provide the same resource as well. So a senior officer from Amy regularly attends those sessions. We also, and I know a lot of councillors in the room have attended the partnership meetings in the past, that will be a regular occurrence where councillors get an opportunity to go to the partnership and feel the temperature, gauge the temperature, and also ask and receive any questions. The partnership partnership chair also meets the chief exec on a regular basis and exec director as well. So again, on that recommendations, we're well on the way and we're confident we can deliver that in full by the 6th of March. Streets Head contract performance. Councillors will recall we came in September and we are coming back in February with an update on performance. I'm pleased to say there's a lot of positive improvements around that area. We are still aiming to bring the infrastructure projects authority in. Unfortunately, got knocked back on November at their call to February next year. And part of that will be an operational health check of how we're managing the Streets Aid contract, the PFI, but also doing a deep dive into what opportunities we've got to get more out of that partnership and the PFI arrangement. It's worth pointing out that longer term actions around planning for the end of the contract, which came out in the inquiry, have not commenced yet. The best practice is usually 10 years from end of contract, so that would be 2028. It is on our radar, it is on our forward plan, so when we get to that time scale, we will start to look at what the end of the contract looks like and what options we've got, but that will be from 10 years out. Chair, I've given a summary there. I'm happy to go through the delivery plan in more detail, or do you want to open for questions?
Yes, let's go through the delivery plan, yeah. Thank you.
So if you move to page 84 and 85. So the first one is around the plaque. Capital Delivery Service have been commissioned to do the first design, which councillors have seen. And as I mentioned now, we are waiting for an alternative design from Stag and its members. And then we're going out in early January to test that in public consultation. So that's a green and that's on schedule. You can see 2 areas have been completed. The outstanding one is the consultation, which will commence in January. Next item is outstanding streets. So the high-level plan's been agreed and that's been signed off. As I mentioned, we have got an amber around the design programme, making sure we've got those designs done. We have put a mitigation in place, bringing Mott's McDonald's in. So Amy will do phases 1 to 4 and Mott McDonald's will now do 5 to 6. Again, it's an amber. We need to flag it as an amber, but we're doing all we can to mitigate that, and we're confident we can mitigate that to have those designs completed by the 6th of March. The next one is the street tree schemes and resurfacing roads. We've got authority approvals and preliminary designs in place. We've got a full programme in place as well now. Any delays to the design process could impact that, but again, we're confident we can deliver that aspect. And this is the March 2025 commitment. So once we've done the designs, this is the aspect around actually going onto the streets and delivering the improvements. As Mr. Buck flagged earlier, the frustration, we understand and fully appreciate frustration from residents on these streets. So the first bit is to get the designs done, get the consultation done, and then actually crack on with those works. And again, Amy are confident they can deliver that full programme within that full year and completion for March 2025. The next area is resilience around resource for the Street Tree Partnership. As I mentioned, we've finished the open recruitment process for business manager. That business manager has just started, and as part of next year's forward plan, we'll make sure you get an introduction to that new member of staff. I mentioned the recruitment to the assistant director. They start on the 15th of January, and the interim head of highways, Diviner, her role's been extended to the end of March, just to make sure we get a proper handover and we get some succession, particularly in around the CIP streets. The partnership manager role's now filled.
Richard, I've changed my mind.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's not go through all the green ones, unless members wish to raise them. I think that's probably is that
absolutely. So the only ambers we've got on there, Chair, are the ones I've mentioned around the designs.
Yes.
And design programme design work from Amy. All the others are on track and green. Most have completed. Some are still outstanding, but scheduled to be completed.
So I'm conscious we told Mr. Buck that we were still committed to that, and I did refer him to this report, but I didn't say, look, it's an amber in this report. You know, I think, yeah, I think I reflected the concerns that we have that you've expressed. I just have let me make a couple of comments on the report, and then I'll throw it open. So I have mentioned this before. The table on page 79. There's a slightly different version of this table coming to Strategy and Resources tomorrow. I guess the agenda was published after ours, so it may have been updated. But members may be advised that if they look at the S&R paper, there is some more information on status of some of these things. I don't know if that's anything that has happened since even that agenda was reported that you might want to draw our attention to in terms of updatedness on that. The other thing I would like to just highlight is the schedule, the position statement on page 95 that lists which roads are in which phase. And it's a comment is that you know, I asked for something like this, and other members asked for something like this, more or less when we agreed, when the date of March 25 was agreed, and it's taken 8 of those 12 months just to have a schedule and it's not even a schedule; it doesn't have dates on it. It says, you know, this work has started, and this, you know, there's been some completion here. So, I mean, I don't know whether officers can explain in a little more detail how this has come about. That we're only at this point 8 months out of the 12 in to the March 25th date. Whether there are any dates that can be attached to any aspects of this, and you know, when it all started. If it didn't start, you know, last March or last May or June, when it did start.
Thanks, Chair. I'll start answering, Dave, if you want to jump in. So you'll be aware that the remaining CIP streets are extremely complex, and we were aware we needed a great deal of work to come up with appropriate engineering solutions, particularly with our prefix of save it wherever we can. Absolutely, the trees at the forefront of those works. To reassure you, we did start this back in February last year, the programme, and looking at what option we've got and the portion of the streets. I think it's fair to say there has been difficulties in programming. I've been frustrated, and I've talked to councillors in briefing sessions around the pace and the battle rhythm, if you like, of getting this moving. There have been issues around redesign of drainage systems, looking at your road lining, underground cables, gas, etc., Yorkshire water facilities, doing a road safety audit as well to make sure whatever we're doing is safe from a road user point of view. That's all delayed it, but I think I share that frustration. It's not been as fast as we would like, hence why the amber's there. but I'd like to give reassurance, but we are in a position now where we can deliver that timescale. So I think it's the progress has been slow. There's been lots of unseen works behind it. And we will be in a place with committee members to share the exact programme, potentially on a Gantt chart or a full forward programme early in January. So you've got that confidence, but we are on track. David, do you want to add anything?
Nothing particular to add from myself. Obviously, if there's any specific questions, I'm happy to field them. I can see some hands up.
Okay, I've got Tim and then Alexi, then Sue.
Right, I'm looking at this timescale. The design's going to be March, and you've got March 25 for the completion. Now, the thing of the works to the roads listed in the Appendix 3. Now, looking back on Western Road, now basically, realistically, you've got to get the works done by the end of November for them because it's not going to, because of the nature of the road surface, etc. So if you don't get them done by November 24, I think there's no way on earth to get them done by March 25. Given the design is only due in March 24, you've got to then go from design to implementation. I can't see how on earth this is going to get done by March 25, all these roads. I just can't see it. What confidence do you have that it's going to happen by those dates?
Yeah, I'm happy to take this one. Obviously, the design submissions are split into phases, so we will be expecting some designs to be with us actually today for phase 1, for us ready to start building a consultation package to start going out to the members of the public. So obviously it's not that everything will be completed, you know, it's not like a homework deadline date where everything's going to be put in all in March. We're going to expect to start consulting on a phased basis from after Christmas. And then obviously moving to proceed from earlier.
Christmas when?
After this Christmas, we'll start consulting with residents.
Oh right, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Sorry.
By Christmas, I was saying this consultation period is slightly truncated. So are you talking about all 6? Is it 6 phases? 6-1, 6-2, whatever, by March 25? Right. Okay.
Just to come in, if I can, Councillor, as David said, so the consultation, the designs by March this year. If there's somewhat do have to extend for certain reasons, then we can accommodate in the programme. But Amy are telling us they've got the resources, they will put the right resources in to make sure these streets are completed by March 2025. You're absolutely right about winter working. There's quite a time scale. But at the moment, Amy are fully committed to the recommendations and completing their element of the recommendations.
Thanks. Alexi.
Thank you, Chair. Did I hear you correctly, Richard? They said that preliminary designs have been completed for all of these?
No, so some streets have, some of the phases have been completed and ready for consultation. Some are still being doing, so Mott MacDonald's, particularly phases 5 and 6, are still underway. As soon as we've got them, so as David's mentioned, it will be a phased approach. So not all consultations will start at the beginning of January. Some will be phased through that period, but the aim is to get them all completed by the 6th of March.
So you said that 26 preliminary designs have been done, and you said that no streets have been lost on those trees. Those streets, sorry, no trees have been lost on those streets.
So the outstanding streets, there's 26 CIP streets in total on the network. And then the initial designs, the early designs which we took for road safety audit, the target's been to save the tree. The next stage is when we start those consultations. Some will be fairly straightforward, and hopefully the majority will be, in that which case Amy then can move straight to installation. So we're not expecting Amy to wait till the 6th of March. If there are some early wins, they can start that installation period. If there's any more complex areas, more complex streets, then that consultation will bring out, and there may be challenges around loss of parking spaces, build-outs, etc. And that's potentially where we'd need to come back to committee for a decision on.
And just final question. I mean, well, Dunkeld Road, that's already lost some trees, but that's obviously for a specific reason. But in terms of phasing, does this mean that all the work will be complete in that order, or is that just for the designs, and then if it's an easier street, would they be able to progress more quickly than some in later phase?
Exactly that. So the designs are completed in phases. Obviously, we'll then move to public consultation. That may affect where it then falls within build. Like Richard said, if there's really relatively straightforward streets, they will go immediately into the build programme. If we get public consultation pushing back saying this doesn't feel right, then we'll obviously have to look at either redesign or coming back to committee for a decision from members.
So,
yeah, thank you. I think thanks for the presentation. I think most of my question has actually been answered in your earlier answers, because I was really wanting to know more about the consultation with the public about these designs. So from what you've told me, can I conclude that the residents on each road will be directly contacted and updated and shown, given chance to feedback on the design?
Yeah. So obviously we're going to have a consultation process which includes engaging in the first instance with Sheffield Street Tree Partnership so that they are cited on what the designs are going to look like, how it's going to affect the street, and obviously give reassurances out there to people that there aren't going to be any tree removals as part of this, because I think for us getting that advanced communication right with the partnership and obviously stakeholder organisations is really, really important. If we've learned one thing from the inquiry report, it's to do that right. The next stage for us will then be obviously to start to build consultation materials via the Have Your Say platform for members of the public to be able to complete that online. You are correct that residents of the street will be given their own direct correspondence. We're also looking at more complicated streets, the potential to deliver some kind of on-street roadshow like we did at Dunkeld Road prior to removing the Dawn Redwood trees there. So we're currently engaging with Amy on what that would look like, and I believe we've even looked at tentatively programming some dates based on the designs meeting the timescales we've outlined.
Thank you. I just wanted reassurance on that. Thank you.
So the normal Amy Works programme is an annual programme that is settled at around when, sort of early in the calendar year, isn't it? In February or something, is it? Or
yeah, we'll be looking for this to be captured in the annual investment plan for Amy Works. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So that programme for the non-winter programme, it runs from when does it run between? What months?
That's a good question. I believe it comes in February to cover the full financial year from April to April. So there will be some works potentially happening into the late autumn. It is an ambitious programme. There are a lot of complicated engineering considerations to take into account, such as when we're completely redoing drainage systems on streets, etc. It's quite invasive work, so we are going to need the full window to get the
full window for construction for the year.
Yeah.
For construction, and I'm just concerned. Let's say one of the designs that only gets agreed, just gets in under the wire in March, then goes to consultation, is realised by everyone not to be appropriate, has to be redesigned. Give me a timeline for how that's ever going to then be built by March the following year.
Yeah, so that's a valid challenge, Councillor Orton. I think that we do have resources in place to redesign. We do obviously have the street tree matrix, which is agreed with Sheffield Street Tree Partnership. So if we were to approach trees on a more condition-based, consideration, how long the engineering solution would last for in terms of longevity, we might be able to come back with a compromise approach to yourselves. But obviously that's purely hypothetical at the minute, so we can't put a figure on how long that would take to redesign and redo, and obviously go through a political process and come speak to yourselves. I suspect it will be tight.
Mike off. I'll say it from a second, Mike. Clearly, the works aren't going to happen, in December, January, while there's snow on the ground and so on. Is there any time for the worst case to do that work in February, March of 25? And what's the capacity? How many streets, if they were still unfinished in 24, could we reasonably expect the capacity to exist to do in a few weeks in 25 before the deadline?
Thanks, Chair. I'll take this one, David. David's right. Until we've got the designs completed and we've done the full consultation, Amy can't start to bring that forward plan of construction forward. They've looked at the indicative timescales. They've given us assurance utilising with the exception of probably December and January, utilising February and March, so it may be close to the wire, but utilising the full year up to sort of November time as well, as David mentioned, into autumn. What we are doing, and it'll be no surprise, but we are using this as a sort of programme management principles, so we will be talking to the briefing sessions once we've got that design and regularly updating councillors on progress using the RAG rating and obviously council officers in the Street Tree Partnership and STAG. I have to be completely honest, it's going to be tight. It's a really tight commitment, but it's one we've said we're going to honour, and Amy are giving us the green light, but they can deliver it. But we need to make sure we've got a programme delivery management around that so we can track it, and if there are any issues, we can flag them early on.
Okay, thank you. And just to be clear, the fact that they've got an annual programme, all these streets are in that annual programme, whatever their design turns out to be, even if that isn't known at the beginning of the programme, because that is the that is how it always works in the past, is you've had a known objective and it goes into an annual programme at the beginning of that programme, and we're not doing that this time. We said we've got some flex on that. Okay, I'm getting nods. Mike, and then if we can wrap it up in 5 minutes, we don't have to extend. Marvellous, Mike.
Oh, in that case, I'll think of a few questions.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Richard, David, and Emily for the presentation. We know from experience that weather can be problematic. And if we get another wet summer like we've had this year, it could lead to slippage in this programme. So, I suppose I'm a bit more sanguine about the fact that there could be slippage on this, but I think ultimately what we want to be confident of is that the resources are there to get this programme finished, even if it does end up being extended into 2025 to resolve.
You could be sanguine, Mike, but I've told Mr. Bucky's getting his road done.
Thanks,
well, bump it up the priority list then, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor. Again, just to give you reassurance, there will be unknowns. We don't know if we're going to have a wet summer, so we are planning on as best we can, true and fair principle. There will be unknowns, but a key around this is there'll be proper programme management in place. So if there are any issues flagging where we might get delays, we'll flag them straight away. Just to reassure you, Amy have given us full confidence, but they are going to put resources into this, so it is part of the original programme. There's still streets which need to be done as part of the asset management programme as well, so that's not going to, we're not going to do the 26 SIP streets as a consequence, not do other streets. That's in addition. And Amy have given us that reassurance, but they will be the unknowns, and if we do get those unknowns, we'll try and mitigate them, but we will keep councillors updated.
Right, thank you. I've not seen the other hands. So this is a recommendation to note. So is that agreed that we note this report? And that's agreed by the meeting. That concludes the business for today. Thank you all for coming. Have a Merry Christmas. People at home, have a Merry Christmas. You may have heard good King Wenceslas coming in over the bells, which is appropriate given how cold it is in this chamber. If only we had a saintly